Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamualaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, chunashumbe, washwale. Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Bonjour, Privet, Kaifa hal? Halishuma Chatore, Ahlan Wasal Marhaba. Buna, mucho gracias, Swabi, Bhalli kare aya. Hosh gal din anayo sayo, Huya Mora, Chivato, Chihal Yud, Kalimera, and a very warm welcome to each and everyone who's actually tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very lucky to have been joined by my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Ms. Hajra Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan and I'm not feeling the best today. Hello Hajra, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me, Shahzad. Jazakallah khair. And certainly we can feel it because Shahzad has a flu and for quite some time he has a very, I think, long incubation period of this virus. And I've also witnessed this thing, especially in my household also, that before COVID, I think we used to get the flu because of the changing season, and that would remain restricted to just 3 or 4 days, and now it has prolonged to 10 to 15 days, which is really worrisome for us because obviously we can see that how climate change is impacting not just the environment out there but also us, and we can feel it, and I think we can also understand it. So it's a high time that we address this elephant in the room, and it's a high time that we start talking about him, and not just talking about him, doing something about it, because obviously it's not just our health, but it's also the Earth's, planet's Earth, which is affected and which is being severely damaged because of our human activity.
Exactly, and just in addition to this, I actually want to kind of share this fact. So imagine what happened was that just because my immunity is a bit low than usually, whatever you for all of those viewers might experience in terms of immunity as well. But having said, so what happened was that I thought that I should get myself flu shots. So that that God forbid whenever the weather is changing, I don't get it, because of how my immunity works, so I get it twice or thrice a year. So imagine what happened was that as soon as I got the flu shots, right after 2 days, I got flu, number one. And then I was like, yeah, I don't know whether, the flu shots are supposed to work within a week's time or not. And then I was like, okay, now it's not going to happen. So imagine, now I see, because imagine that if you go pre-COVID, we didn't really, for example, if I had flu, it won't go off to my daughters or, anybody else in the family. Now, if there's one person who's actually ill in the house, all of those other people are going to get ill. And that's how it happened again. And, so I was thinking, okay, I think it's the flu shot which has worked, and which is why, everybody's got flu and I do not. And all of a sudden here I am, going through flu.
And I think there is this general debate about how we need to avoid the antibiotics, because if something happens, we go and we fetch antibiotic and we see that that's the cure for all of our ills, and that has obviously certainly impacted our immunity. And because of the fact that we use a lot of these antibiotics, we can see that our cure time has prolonged a lot, and obviously the virus is getting potent, also very contagious, like Shahzad is mentioning about it.
And in addition to that, Hajra, I would want to add, because when we speak about, because you spoke about antibiotics as well, ladies and gentlemen, God forbid, if we are going to kind of be hooked on to antibiotics, we will actually develop antimicrobial resistance in our bodies, and then from days to come, God forbid, the antibiotics are not going to work. So imagine that, just exactly because of this condition of flu I'm talking about, so I happened to be in England once, and then, I had the same condition. I had to go to a doctor, and as soon as I went to the doctor never gave me any medicine. This is the trend over here, that that we would want to go on to medicines. Otherwise they would be like, go back home, just have some warm water, lukewarm water, goggles and all of that. They won't give you any medicine. Over here, you can have Arinac, you can have Zinocine sprays and whatnot. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you look after and do not take medicines unnecessarily.
And unattended too, right? So, moving on to our top stories, which is about Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif held a telephonic call with the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Netherlands, Mark Rutte. Both leaders further agreed to continue cooperation on the issues related to climate change. Prime Minister appreciated the humanitarian assistance of the Dutch government for the flood victims in Pakistan, as well as the support of Dutch water experts in preparing Pakistan's resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction framework. 4RF, and obviously we have seen how climate, because we were talking about the climate change. So this concept is such a wholesome concept that it affects every walk of life.
True.
And obviously from floods to our personal lives, it's a very devastating sort of a concept that is engulfing our entire world. And obviously we will talk more about it, but moving on to another top story, which is about International Mother Language Day is being observed today to promote cultural and linguistic diversity. The theme this year is Multilingual Education, a necessity to transform education. International Mother Language Day was proclaimed by General Conference of United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO in November 1999. And certainly, I think in Pakistan, we have this very elitist conception of where we think that the English is the supreme language.
True.
English is a superior language and it will offer you a lot of opportunities. And because of that, we are depriving ourselves of our very nativist or indigenous languages. And I think Pakistan has around 70 indigenous languages. And that's a very diverse, that's a very multilingual landscape in the first place.
Exactly.
So,
And you know, Hajra, I believe that, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure that we kind of work on it, and, you know, that our future generations are actually more aware of it, and that we have conversations.
True.
You know, we have those Adabi Melas, you know, literature festivals, and people really need to go out there to make sure that they kind of preserve it, make sure that they kind of utilize it to its best. But now, moving on to my favorite bit, where, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday it was Peshawar Zalmi versus Quetta Gladiators, where Peshawar Zalmi actually beat Quetta Gladiators by 4 wickets in the 9th match of Pakistan Super League in Karachi. PTV Sports telecasting the match live. Earlier, Peshawar Zalmi captain Babar Azam won the toss and put Quetta into bat. Babar Azam and Peshawar Zalmi, you know, there was no one, you know, in the batters list that, you know, who actually crossed the milestone of half a century. But in Quetta Gladiators, it was Iftikhar Ahmed who made it 50 of 34. Quetta Gladiators was struggling right from the beginning. Arshad Iqbal was a good replacement to go join Peshawar Zalmi. Otherwise, I believe Peshawar Zalmi, Babar Azam led Peshawar Zalmi, ladies and gentlemen, did a great job, sealed another victory for themselves. Now coming back to
climate change, a topic that is very pertinent, that has not just engulfed Pakistan but the entire globe out there. And Shahzad, we're living in an anthropogenic age, which means that human activity or human ecology is encroaching over the other ecologies, and we are destroying other habitats and other ecologies. So it's a high time that we talk about it and we do something about it, because obviously when we are disturbing the balance of the nature, we can certainly feel the effects are not just limited to those ecologies but to also our own ecology, right? So to talk more about the effects of the climate change and how it is engulfing Pakistan and what are the adverse effects about it, and most importantly, what are the solutions regarding the climate change, we are very glad that we have been joined by Dr. Ijaz Ahmed Saab, who happens to be an environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
So wonderful to have you over here.
So season is changing, and I think we can very well feel the effects of that. And I think especially Shahzad can also voice his opinion very much prominently on it. The changing seasonalities of the nature, we can see that there was this report which mentioned of the United Nations that Pakistan is going to have shrinked winter months of just 2 months, and summer is going to expand to 6 months, right? And that's very devastating, because last year we had the hottest April, I think in the history, because the temperature rose as high as to 50 degrees centigrade, and that too in Islamabad. We never experienced that before.
It's 25, 26 these days.
Yes. So what is your opinion about it?
Well, I think if we see overall, as you mentioned, that the seasons are shrinking, but winter season has gone actually to reduced to 2 months, maybe a little less than that, and summers are prolonged. And then we used to, read and observe 4 weathers in Pakistan, 3 months each. But now, we are just actually having only 2 to 3 seasons.
Okay.
Right after winter, even during winter, as you mentioned, last year in April, even May and June were the hottest month globally. In these hottest months were in Pakistan.
Sir, I think that the most important question which stands as of now is, can we reverse it as humans?
Well, yeah, we can, but then I think it takes time. I always say that if you plant a tree, it takes about 70 to 80 years to mature, to get benefit out of it. And it takes about 30 seconds to 1 minute to get rid of it or remove it.
True.
Right.
So, in order to reverse that process, we need another 70 years or 50 years or whatever. So, I think it generally.
But do we have that much of a time frame or liberty that we can engage ourselves?
No.
Yes.
No.
We don't have. I mean, like that is why there are various research organizations who are working on how to actually reverse this process. Although it is going to take time, but maybe like lesser time than we expect.
Right.
For example, like just talking about the reducing footprints. Now we are focusing on electronic vehicles, which actually will reduce the overall carbon footprint of general public as well.
That's what the
But
perception is.
that is, of course, yeah. It depends.
Not the reality.
Yes. Well, it also depends on the source of energy that you are using in order to charge those vehicles. So, if you are using
or
coal,
to make those batteries.
Yes, that is another aspect.
Yeah.
But I think with the passage of time, because now the realization is there, the efforts are going on. So, the process will take lesser time than we expect.
But obviously, for that, we really need to kind of think about it, move in the right direction. And I believe that, that our audiences out there now are particularly more aware of, what has actually kind of disturbed the entire ecology, as Hajra mentioned. So, let's talk about how do you think life's going to be? Because imagine that, we over here are not habitual of living at 50 degrees centigrade. True. And unfortunately, even in 25, 26 yesterday, people were feeling very uncomfortable. Right. And on top of that, you might get energy shortage. How do you think that we really can accommodate as people, so that we can live comfortably at least, even if it's hot?
And what about the migrations that are going to happen because of this climate change? And that is going to induce conflict in the first place.
That is going to happen. I mean, like
and this is exactly what happens in Canada too, because it's too cold.
Yes. But again, I think that the environment over there is also, changing. You just
there was a hailstorm yesterday.
Exactly in
Islamabad,
and even in US, the kind of floods that was observed about a month ago were not actually there before during this season. So, migration is going to happen, and it is happening actually. People have started, those who have resources, they have actually started moving to different more comfortable zones. But what will happen is those comfortable zones are also going to change ultimately. Just give an example
and
of
these
Islamabad.
places might get a little more cooler then, because lesser population might make it helpful for them.
Yeah, or other option is that maybe the temperature or the environment and the ecology of that area is also going to change, and ultimately they are going to suffer. So, it's just matter of time. Just giving you example of Islamabad only. So, the Islamabad was quite different about 20-30 years ago.
True. That's true.
The temperature was different.
That's true.
Similarly,
and that was the reason why we shifted the capital from Karachi to Islamabad. The weather was the
that was
big
one
factor.
of the reasons.
Yes.
And if you see the development that is happening, the conversion of the green areas, conversion of forest into housing societies, it enormous. And in order to feed them, you need bigger roads, you need more vehicles, etc., etc. So, whatever we are doing, these are actually very temporary arrangements, and ultimately maybe like in 15-20 years we will be talking about where to move now.
Yeah.
So, ultimately if you see the development, unplanned development is going on in Galiyat,
right,
in northern part of Pakistan, Kaghan, all the like hilly areas. So, if we don't control it, if we don't manage it properly, this is going to
be another chaos for us.
Yes, maybe it will take little more time,
right,
because people are more conscious, but I think we have not learned.
And let's explore the relationship between the climate change and the earthquakes, because I came across one of this assertion or the article which mentioned that because of this global warming, there's a lot of melting of the glaciers, and because of the melting of the glaciers, the pressure that was on the tectonic plates, so they're moving more because of, the less pressure on them because the glaciers are melting, right? So you are an environmentalist, so how do you see this assertion? Is it because of the climate change that we are having more earthquakes around the world?
I'm not sure actually. I have not gone through the article that you're talking about, but Quran says that these mountains are actually holding the overall atmosphere and the earth. So if we are actually, like removing all these nails, so the balance is going to happen. And ultimately, it will have impact on tectonic plates.
Exactly, and while we were talking about it, just yesterday there was another wave of earthquake in Tokyo. Unfortunately, I think the magnitude was 6.4. But now, sir, let's come down to how I've already shared this example with our viewers as well. That that there's this documentary where there were foxes first in that
Yellowstone
jungle.
National Park.
And then what happened was they had to introduce them back so that the ecology of the entire jungle works. Now, coming back over here, we do see that we have cut down a lot of trees. Islamabad used to be the most green, lush city over here. Now, because there was this one phase, because I used to ride bikes, somewhere when it was winters. And, so there was this one phase you would go into. So imagine that you just finish Magla Road right next to Capital Park. And as soon as you move on towards E11, you would feel that cold breeze because there were so many trees outside. Now, we have disturbed the entire ecology, the birds which were here, the animals which were here, there was so much of wildlife over here. There was so much of wildlife over here. How do you think that it will have an impact on us as humans? And
well, I think nature has actually, has produced even a small insect for a purpose. So what we are doing is with our intelligent, thinking, we are trying to remove all those creatures from here. And ultimately, it is going to have impact on. There are studies which says that only these frogs, they eat millions of larvae of mosquitoes. So if you remove those frogs, these larvae are going to become mature, and ultimately, issues related to dengue, issues related to all, malaria, etc., they are going to increase. So the nature, whenever you play with nature, you are going to suffer. And this is very unfortunate that when we talk about a tree, cutting a tree, making a road, instead of having a public transport system, where people should have, 50 people sitting in a bus as compared to 50 vehicles running on the road, and or all the emissions are coming to us, and then removing the tree. The tree is a life actually, like the insects, the birds, and even the birds. If you go into the southern part of Pakistan, where cotton is the main crop, what has happened is people have actually destroyed the ecosystem to that extent that the birds which were feeding on the insects which were actually damaging the cotton crop have disappeared. So now we are trying to reintroduce those birds into that area.
Do you think that that having zoos is a good idea, or do you think having safaris is a better idea? Because there are a lot of people who've kept these exotic animals, they've domesticated them. Just very recently we have seen that there was havoc. And there were a lot of people whose lives were being risked as well. So what do you think is a better solution?
Even if you go to Islamabad Zoo, that you would just find that the animals are, unfortunately, so much they're anxious about it. That's true. And the way we deal with them, that's another factor, right?
Islamabad Zoo is closed actually. Now they are talking about some virtual zoo in Islamabad, and there are some plans about it. But I prefer to see animals in their natural habitat, not in zoos, not in safari even. Safari is a maybe better option in a sense that at least they have a bigger space. Like if you
just like having a treadmill in a gym.
Exactly.
A place to run. Okay, go ahead, run, but come back.
Exactly. They don't gain weight. They don't become sluggish. If for a bird, sky is the limit. And if you confine a bird in a small cage, you are actually destroying the whole nature and the nature of
characteristics of the bird.
Characteristics of the habitat of the bird. Similarly, when you talk about leopard or talk about lion or bear or whatever.
Because people are very picky on this, sir. You call a leopard a cheetah, they will correct you there and then.
We don't have any cheetah
in
Pakistan.
I got the point out there. Okay, so let's talk about the solutions of the climate change, right? So we've talked about how adversely climate change is affecting us. Moving to the solutions, we know that it's a very tricky subject because people are not willing to adapt to it, because it means that they have to make make some very uncomfortable changes in their lifestyle, and they're so much habitual of those luxuries that they're not willing to cut it down, right? So let's come back to solutions which are more feasible and which are good for us. So coming back to the nature-based solutions, right? What do you have to say? Because I do feel that one of the conference also mentioned the nature-based solution which happened in the Sharm el-Sheikh, the COP27 conference.
Yeah, of course, I think the nature-based solutions are always more environmental friendly, more human, anthropogenic in a sense that they relate to human being. I think the simple solution to these issues are that you need to understand the root causes. The root causes are our lifestyle. And our lifestyle will include more vehicles, more bikes, more emissions. So basically,
yes.
and more removal of forests, which actually sequester carbon.
Yes.
So if you bring them back, ultimately the nature will come back. Just like the example that you was giving about the wolf that was reintroduced in Yellowstone National Park, changed the whole ecology of that park within 15 to 20 years.
Exactly, and everything started to live again.
Exactly.
And the jungle was lush green and everything was back in place, and nobody could have realized
exactly.
that could happen.
Small intervention would actually make that difference.
Exactly.
And also we are having these debates, especially in Brazil, Shahzad, where there's a huge Amazon forest. And the Amazon forest is called the lungs of the world because it sequesters a lot of carbon there.
Yes.
And then the people are campaigning against that forest because they want to clear that out and they want to build factories there.
Right.
So how harmful can its removal be? And even when we are having such kind of debates in an era where the climate change is making its presence felt so much pertinently, what do you have to say about it?
Well, I think, like we all know that this is a big sink of carbon.
That's
so
true.
if we remove that sink, ultimately that carbon will go somewhere because we are not controlling the production. So I think that is where we need to think that what are the alternate options, and do we really need to cut this forest? The vertical actually development may be one of the solution, that instead of spreading the colonies over a vast area, maybe you can think about having multi-story building which have their own actually climatic impact, and they call it heat islands. Because of the consumption of and then electricity as well as the overall footprint. ACs, you need more ACs, you need blah blah blah. So that is basically, we need to think about it that whatever the lifestyle we have, that does this support the environment and the earth.
Exactly, and thank you very much, sir, for kind of shedding some more light onto it, and people really need to kind of take it like this, that we keep on pushing about it. But I believe that the solution has always been right in front of our own eyes, and it's because that just in order to wait for another 70, 80 years for all of that sacrifice we're going to make so that our future generations are safe, I think that the solution, imagine during COVID when we had lockdowns in place, the sky was clear.
Yes.
There was no
You
dust
could see Margala Hills.
Everything was so fresh, and you could feel it. You go out, for a walk in the evening, you come to F6 and you do this walk park as well. So imagine, I would think that, hey, we should actually introduce some mechanisms with which people who are only important for that particular day go to their workplace, get it done, and then come back home, and then vice versa.
Uncomfortable conversation, right?
No, I mean, it's not uncomfortable conversation, but people really need to kind of come down to this point that we can do it together. So imagine 3 days, we take off, 2 days you take off, and so that there's lesser rush. We kind of utilize all of those resources at our dispense carefully.
But I think this was the overall concept of Islamabad, when the master plan of Islamabad, actually, that's why we have all the facilities in Markaz. Markaz of every sector was supposed to actually
cater for. And then smaller markets in every sector.
And yes, so I think that was the reason that Islamabad was planned in that way, which is kind of more future planning ideas, that you don't have to actually go here and there. But unfortunately, master plan was not followed according to the spirit of it. We don't have any. I still feel if we start more aggressive, more comprehensive, integrated transport mechanism, there will be very positive impact in a very short period of time.
And I think this is the entire concept of the climate justice, because it means that the countries that are vulnerable, or the communities that are more vulnerable because of this menace, they should be given more priority and importance, because ultimately if we are not protecting them, then obviously that will come back to haunt us again. So this is the concept of the climate justice, and in the next segment we are definitely going to talk about the justice as a concept as a whole. But thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for coming to our show, for this cross-pollination of the ideas, for this wonderful conversation. And I think we will keep having such conversations more and more, with more frequency and with more intensity, because obviously we are seeing that how climate change is rolling out in front of us. So we're going on a short break. Please don't go anywhere.
Good morning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying tuned to PTV World. You're watching World this morning. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and with me, lucky to have been joined by my very well-learned colleague, who happens to be Ms. Hajar Satti. Earlier, we were talking about climate change, but now, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about family change. I mean, imagine that, you know, that for all of this time, you've been living in a wonderful family, and all of a sudden, just because of you've had disagreements with your other half, ladies and gentlemen, things can actually get a little dicey. And when, God forbid, they do get dicey over here within our own society, we do want to make sure that people patch up, that people, you know, live in harmony. But God forbid, if that cannot happen, you know, what happens to the children, you know, so who takes the custody, how do we pay for the maintenance, and how the rule is, and how the law actually teaches us that you can kind of, or probably does law give us the opportunity to kind of patch up as well.
And there's a very famous maxim, Shahzad, justice delayed is justice denied, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, and we're going to talk about the family issues, and especially how does the law relates to them, and what is the equation of the justice system into that, because obviously children are
all right,
and
yeah, which is why, you know, we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by an expert over here inside the studios. He's been a regular, ladies and gentlemen, on the show. He happens to be a very senior lawyer. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've been joined by Mr. Shahzad Alvi. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Assalam. Thank you very much. I'm okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here.
Thank you.
But when, God forbid, you know, this is like having a sad background music in the first place. God forbid, if the two people are not willing to live together, they will file for a divorce. Do you think that the woman can actually get her right? You know, God forbid, if he wants to ask for a divorce, because on Nikah-nama, there's this particular paper which people usually cross out, and that, God forbid, you know, takes the very right away from the lady, that she cannot actually ask for a divorce, if I'm right.
Well, so for your question is concerned, the divorce is exclusive right given to the male by
Only.
Allah Almighty. Yes.
Okay.
And in Sharia law as well. But in Pakistan, the law applicable is Muslim Family Law Ordinance 1961. Which is what I'll say, that is a mixture of Islamic law as well as the British law. That they have mixed up these two concepts. And in the nikah form, if you see that there is a specific right if somebody wants to give to a lady.
Khula, probably.
No, not khula.
Then?
It's talaq-e-takweez. Talaq-e-takweez means that women can divorce the male, but specifically if this right has been given to the female.
Okay.
But if the female doesn't have that right,
on the Nikah-nama.
On the Nikah-nama.
On the Nikah paper.
Yes, then she has the other option, that is khula.
Okay.
That is the Islamic way. But there are some conditions for khula. I mean, these conditions were driven by the Islamic history, and especially from the life of Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him. There is an incident that Hazrat Zainab, who was the cousin of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, she visited to the Prophet, and she said that I do not want to continue my family life with my husband.
True.
And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked certain 4 questions, and these are the 4 the reasons for a female
to ask for khula.
Yes, then she can go for the khula. I mean, Number one is that the Prophet asked that whether he's not paying you the maintenance. She said that he's paying me the maintenance. The other question that whether he is making you torture physically. She said no. The third thing is that whether he's having a physical, perfect with a relation of wife-husband. She said yeah, she's okay. Then the Prophet asked that what is the reason? She said no, I don't like him. I don't want to stay with him anymore. This is also a reason that even if a female say that I do not like this person, I do not want to stay, the Islam gives such a right to a female that she can go for the khula, that if she's not happy, nobody can force her to stay with that person.
All right. So, that certainly means that there's no other question left behind with these 4 questions. I think it kind of encompasses each and every aspect of life of 2 people living together.
Yeah.
But now, sir, okay, so do you think that the court is going to give them time to kind of patch up, or do you think that the court will actually kind of have this intent while, the lady is going to go file for khula that, okay, why don't you give your husband 6 months, talk it out, separation and all of that. And then, God forbid, if the divorce is still yet to happen, or it will take place, do you think that, that the child custody will be given there and then, or do you think that they will have to go all over the process again?
So, for your first part of your question is that it's mandatory that there must be some time given to the to both of the spouses, because in West, even in USA and in UK and other the Western countries, there is a process of a divorce which takes more than a year. And even before 2008, this was also in Pakistan as well, that for the khula, if a lady applied for the khula, she had to give the evidence and she had to prove the reasons. But the legislation in Musharraf regime in 2008, this is my personal view which I am telling, that this has become the reason for the destruction of the Pakistani family system, because there is no evidence required. Only a statement of a female is required, that if she approached to the court and she said that no, I'm not willing to live with him. Only 2 months or maybe 3 months time it takes. And this is a very little time, because in Islam and even the other psychological psychology expert says that there must be a certain time, maybe a 6 months, maybe a year, which gives a time to both of the spouses to rethink again. And there's a definite chance for the reconciliation. If there is, a very critical, a very severe situation, then the khula, that is understandable. But just a sudden fight and just in a emotional state of mind. So the court
will obviously verify that all over the course of their proceedings.
Yes.
And then child custody. So the later part of the question was that that now you've got yourself divorced and you've separated and you've parted ways, and then obviously the best debate or what people would want to talk about is who will take the children, and does the age of your child matter, and does it matter that what gender of the child is, whether it's a male or a female, a boy or a girl, how does it work?
Okay.
And before you answer, very sorry, but for all of those people who are out there, ladies and gentlemen, in no way we are advocating that this is the right course to take. I think that we are those people who would always advocate about patching up, being together in harmony, living in harmony. But it's just that there are a lot of people who might find it difficult to figure out the right course, and I think that's why we're having this conversation. Please.
Okay. So for the age is concerned, normally, if the boy who has attained the age of 7 years, normally we see that the right of father prevails.
Okay.
And so for the baby girl is concerned at the age of 12. But now this is not a hard and fast rule.
All right.
There are the latest judgments by the superior courts that the principle which they have laid down, that is the welfare of the minor, that prevails. Even if the boy who has attained the age of 7 and his father is not eligible to for his better brought up, or he is busy in his job, or he has some sort of bad character, financial issue, or a bad character, or is a criminal.
Okay.
So the court will never hand over the boy to the father.
So the well-being of the child is being.
Yes, and even on the other side, if we see that according to for the baby girls, the mother right prevails. But if there is a question of mental disability of the mother, or her valid with proofs her character issue, or some extraordinary circumstances, the custody of a baby girl can be removed towards the father. So the welfare of the minor is a prevailing factor.
But
Okay,
very quickly, very
let's-
sorry, Haja, but I think that it's really getting a little technical. So imagine that you spoke about that. God forbid, if the mother does not have the right character, to look after
Yes.
their kids, obviously they can still go over there. And for all of these you mentioned, don't you think that that the lawyers out there or the advocates out there might just take a lot of advantage out of it? And imagine that what a lady might have to go through in a courtroom. God forbid if there's character assassination allegations on her.
Yes.
And how do we make sure that there's some code of ethics while we're proceeding for divorce, which happens to be a right of that lady or a boy?
No. Just mere allegation is not a ground.
Okay.
Just to ask a question during cross-examination is not a ground.
Okay.
The word which I have used, I'll repeat again, there must be a valid proof.
Okay.
For example, some sort of which the cases which I have come across, that if there is a mental disability medical reports, or so far the character is concerned, if there is some sort of undeniable proof, then
Okay.
the court will think about
Undeniable
this.
proof.
Undeniable proof.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's talk about the out of the court settlements, and let's talk about the ADR system, because like Shahzad mentioned, there's certain stigma attached to court kacheri ke chakkar, and obviously the hefty lawyer fees, and it's a very time consuming process. And the matter of the fact is that law is written in English, which might not be accessible to a lot of poor people who are having these family disputes, right? So let's pontificate over the concept of the ADRs, alternative dispute resolution system. Do you think it's a success story of our judiciary, which a judicial intervention which is designed for the commoners out there, which can be a very cost-effective solution to these family disputes?
Okay. According to Muslim Family Law Ordinance, the basic, the statute says that the very immediate place where a female, especially for the female, that she can approach, that is the union council.
Okay.
Normally the people, those who are sitting in the union council, are the respectable people of the locality.
Okay.
And the people normally follow their suggestions and their intervention.
Right.
And if the lady or any of the party who is not satisfied, the court is a second option.
Yeah.
Normally here there is a practice which I think it's a wrong practice. Being a lawyer, I'm saying that the people directly approach to the courts and they started the litigation process.
Okay.
And there are a
How
lot.
can that happen? How can they directly reach out to courts?
No. The law provides them the
Facility.
the facility
Okay.
that they can directly approach. But
Right.
according to the statute, the first place to approach for any kind of dispute is the union council,
True.
and that is the nearest place where the lady resides. She can approach to that union council, and the other party will be called upon. And the proceedings in union council is like a jirga and like a panchayat process. It's a very immediate result comes.
Okay.
But normally the people says that no, the other party is influential, or we do not believe upon that person, or there are many other excuses.
Yes.
So they approach to the court.
Right.
And the second thing is that there must be a setup in the local government, because the local government can play a very great role in this sort of the issues that the people normally approach to the union council locality chairman and their respectables of the
But
locality.
when you talk about the local government system, let's talk about the jirga system, right? We have seen that we talked about this maxim like justice delayed is justice denied, and that is why, to avoid the very laborious process of judicial system, a lot of people revert back to the jirgas, and we have seen that there is a total power captured by the elites in the jirga, and there is not a proper dispensation of the justice in those particular traditional system. So
Yeah.
what is the standing of the jirgas in the judicial setup, and how effective do you think they are?
Because justice delayed is divorce delayed as well. If you look at it from a very
Right.
different perspective, a lot of families might have been saved just because of the fact it was so time consuming. And just in addition to that, where you're going to move on and talk about how the jirga system works, God forbid, because I've seen a lot of examples over here that people, in the heat of the argument, so they are divorced now, and then all of a sudden they are back together and they're like, oh, nahi ji ek wari hoi si, nahi ji do wari hoi si, and our society is full of these stories. So do you think that those patch-ups are legal then?
One thing which I want to make it clear through this program, that the degree of khula is not a final degree.
Okay.
Okay.
That is considered one divorce,
Okay.
according to a judgment of 2013 Karachi
So
High Court.
even the woman has a right for 3 khulas?
No.
Okay.
She'll apply for the khula, she'll get a decree,
Okay.
and that will consider a first divorce. Then again she has to approach to the union council for the
Okay.
finality of that decree. again it requires 3
कि
months.
ज़हन change तो नहीं हो गया कहीं? Or you have changed your mind कि नहीं, okay, you know, I'm
No,
going to
no,
give from your mind.
again law gives
That's a
3
very
months.
laborious process, right?
Again, the law
I mean, it
gives,
gives you the opportunity to kind of settle down, you know.
no, it can be settled down in union council. Again, I'll say, even obtaining the degree from the court, you have to approach to the union council for the finality, yes, for the finality of that decree. Again, it requires 3 months. The union
So why
council,
doesn't the court and union council work together?
no, according to this system, they are working together
Okay.
because that degree becomes the final through union council, because the certificate issued by the union council will be considered as a final certificate, and then the lady can remarry somewhere else.
Okay.
Because only having a degree from the court, she has not the right to marry somewhere. Okay, again, she requires 3 months process.
Yeah.
And what I think that I've gone through a book of Mere Mashhoor Muqaddme by S.M. Zafar. It's one of a very famous book. In that book, he even also shared his experience that when I started my practice in 1954, I applied for a khula, and the judge gave me a date of 3 months. And I was very disappointed. But after 3 months, when there was a date, we came to know that the situation has been resolved, and the instruction by the client is to withdraw the case.
Yeah.
And when I visited that judge, and judge said that this is the reason. So in the family case, there is no justice, there is justice denied.
Yeah.
There must be a reasonable time given to both of the spouses.
True.
Okay.
And try again and again, because the thing is that especially from the, with very excuse from the female side, there is always an emotional state of mind, and sometimes the problem, this is my personal experience, is that there is unusual support given to the lady, that, oh, you are facing such sort
From
of
her family?
from her family,
Okay.
that you are facing such sort of problem, and live him will
आप उधर घर के दरवाजे खुले हैं तुम्हारे
खुले हैं,
लिए,
you
आ
just
जाओ।
come back, you just come back. And this is not a way. But if there is a reasonable grounds or the reasonable reasons that she is really facing such sort of a physical torture or mental
Yeah,
torture or
there's a
some
life
sort,
threat, or, you know,
life
she's-
threats or
her-
something.
Her well-being is at stake, I think.
yes,
obviously.
then it's okay. But on the normal course, if there is a just dispute, which I have come across, that one of the ladies, she said that he always says me to just give me a cup of tea. I'm not a servant.
चाव मांगता रहता है हर वेले।
I'm not a servant.
So they
these
came
are-
to court?
Yes.
Really?
And yes.
कि हर वेले चाव मांगता है?
And yes. And 90% of the cases,
That's what the problem is.
that are the petty issues.
True.
That are not the major issues. 90% of their ego dispute, egoistic their problems, and these reasons become that why I'll go for the earning his clothes and these things. So that's why I can't live with him.
Exactly.
So the reason there must be, the thing is that there should be
Enough time to patch up.
there should be a tolerance. You ask the question, the crux of your all question is that the tolerance is the reason that can make your family life happy. The only thing.
And also,
All is well.
Yes.
Shahzad, we've seen that our courtrooms are not designed in a way to listen to the aggrieved parties, because like you mentioned that how there is a lot of character assassination of one particular party just to get the divorce, right? So how can we make our courtrooms more, I would say, a friendly sort of an environment where the both parties could come together and they could have this discussion? And sometimes what happens is that when you are having a broader discussions, a lot of things can be sorted out, right? And you do not even need to go to that an extreme step of getting a divorce, right? So how can we make our courtrooms a more friendly environment to the centers where people, parties, aggrieved parties can come together and they can have a broader
Just
discussion?
go to the judge's room and, you know, sit down and talk about it. And I think Judge
And have
Saab
a
should
chai
be
and
there.
biscuits, right?
There is a way that normally I have come across that maximum time the good judges, they sent out all the relatives and the lawyers
True.
out of the court.
Okay.
Only wife and husband are there.
Okay.
And then a judge asking simple questions. What is the dispute? Because if I'm a lawyer of one party, I will represent my case and I'll prove that my client is very innocent.
No
And
matter
all,
what happens.
and all the problem is from the other side.
True.
And this other thing is that a term which we use, we lawyers, that in family dispute there is always a reason is the third party. Third party could be the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law, or any of the relative who is having fond of the politics. So the third party become the reason.
Right.
But if the wife husband, they both are standing alone and there is
Right.
no other intervention,
Yeah.
Right.
intervention of lawyers, intervention of the relatives.
Right.
This is the reason, and this has been even instructed by the Honorable Supreme Court to the family judges that adopt this practice. that while the process of reconciliation is in process,
right,
you send out every person out of the court,
right,
even call them inside your chamber and ask what is the reason.
And it's and thank you very much for mentioning that as
Right.
well, because exactly in the first place, that's why they're in the courtroom, right?
Yes.
You know, because there was this third party who were actually kind of intervening or poking their nose. But now, sir, one last question, and that is that I'm not going to say, or I'm not going to use it generically. I think I've got a better way to say it, that we do see that a lot of people, just for the sake of money, would actually continue to kind of share stories to their party or to their clients that, hey, you know what, it's not going to work out for you, and no matter what happens, they will make sure that they will prolong the case, get more fees out. Now, a lot of times we are not good judges, and we are not very responsible with who to pick and how to pick and how to judge whether I have the right lawyer. How do you think that we can identify a good family lawyer?
Well, this is your personal observation. What I'll say, that during discussion, normally the client is very sensible.
Yeah.
He smell it, that what he is telling.
Sensible hota tha talaq tak baat pahunchti. Mujhe ye bataye.
Yes. So the thing is that this is a job of the lawyer, and specifically now the judicial policy which has been imposed, which has been given by the Honorable Supreme Court, is to expedite these matters,
Okay.
not to prolong these things. And now the Islamabad High Court, that I'll admire, that they have started imposing the heavy cost to the lawyers
okay,
for a frivolous litigation.
Okay.
okay. That's a good step.
Yes. So even
wonderful
100,000 rupees, even 200,000 rupees, that this writ petition or this case is not maintainable, and this is not necessary. This is just
Why did
wastage
you
of your
get it?
time,
True.
and
Right.
this is this is dismissed with this cost.
Wow.
So
I
This
think
is-
that's a very good example to even reduce the backlog of the cases, because obviously our judicial system is heavily overburdened in terms of the backlog of the cases, and obviously when we say justice delayed, justice denied, this is one of the reason. And I think in the future we will continue to see such kind of positive intervention in the judicial system, because obviously when a justice is dispensed to the society, we can see society progressing. Thank you so much, Azad Saab, for
Exactly.
coming here.
And just very quickly, so obviously, we've spoken about it, that God forbid if there's no life threat, if there's no threat to your well-being,
Right.
and it's just a mere egoistic issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I think in such cases, divorce will be delayed only if justice is being delayed as well. And I think that's the right course of action to take, so that people can still live happily together. And for all of those people who are out there, please make sure that you value your partners, because they contribute quite a lot. And you unknowingly are most of the time, or me or anybody else, are thankless. Please make sure that we are thankful, that we have gratitude, thank Allah Almighty for all of what He has bestowed upon you. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember us all in your duas. Until next time, 1, 2, 3.
Good morning.
Have a great day.